Okay, guys, welcome to week 10. So we're in ceramics too. Some of you are home, some of you are here, but it is time for your fourth independent project. And we talked about some kind of minimum requirements, things that we kind of like want to put to mind or keep in mind. And we also want to look at some people who have challenged themselves before. So for this week, you can see I've got a Google form here for you again. It's one question. However, up here I've got a list of ceramic artists. There are some that I've suggested that might give you a little range of ideas. You looked at some towards the beginning of the year, um, but I wanted to give you another chance to look and see what else is out there. What are people doing with clay or have done with clay that might be inspiring to you? So take a look at some of these artists and then propose something. Here's what I plan to do. Get your 10 points, right? Free points. So I've got a little slide presentation here for you. And basically, it's got a picture of an artist and a little example. So who are some of these famous people? Peter Voulkos is probably one of the most famous potters ever. During the 1960s, he kind of took the abstract expressionist movement, which was painting driven, and applied it to the process of creating with clay. So instead of making functional ware and worrying about things like we've been worrying about with our golden mean piece, just the height or the width or the elegance of the form, he worked from his gut. I'm going to throw this thing and then I'm going to smash it into the side of this other piece and combine them together and create these sculptural forms out of things that I have built on the wheel or off the wheel. And so his pieces have a lot of energy. They're very macho. And I've always really enjoyed the aggressive way that he works with the clay. Daniel Rose was more careful potter and sculptor. You can see him helping a student here, studied abroad and came back. And his elegant, sort of simple forms, I think, is pretty cool. And of course, I love the untreated surface here with just these kind of like smoky rings that makes it look sort of like it's an artifact. Lucy Rye, on the other hand, is sort of your traditional potter. So if you're somebody who works on the potter's wheel, you might want to look at some of her work. English, beautiful, elegant forms. So you'll see these tall cylinders and simple bowls, and then she would sometimes just give it like a little bit of a squeeze so that the form itself wasn't perfectly symmetrical anymore, but had that memory of being an elegant, perfect form. Bernard Leach, probably again one of the most influential artists of American pottery, went abroad to China and studied with a guy who became his partner, Soji Hamato, and came back and applied some of the principles that he learned in Japan to the kind of pottery that he was making at home. I've always loved these little square vases that he makes. Here's a beautiful little bowl with a nice little elegant foot on there. So it could be that you say, like I want to do hand building. I'm going to look at Bernard Leach's forms. Or I want to do throwing. And it could be just as simple as like this week, I really want to work on my trimming because I like the way that this little foot holds this little simple form. And so I'm going to try to make a thicker bottom on my piece, but trim it so that I get this little raised bowl that kind of hovers above the table because of the way that it's formed. Or maybe you want to sculpt. Robert Arneson was a funk fake artist from the 1960s. His pieces have a lot of uh, humor to them. So this one is pretty tame, and you'll find some that are less tame out there. But his sculptures have a lot of sense of humanity through his sense of humor. Paul Cummins, with the help of a guy named Tom Piper, created this installation, and maybe you're thinking along the lines of doing multiples instead of a single piece. Now, this would be a huge undertaking. These poppies represent lives lost during the First World War and were installed by hundreds of volunteers at the Tower of London. Uh, But even something a little less ambitious, where you're thinking about the space that you are presenting your work, could be a way of moving forward this week. And Kenneth Price, I like his work. I've seen it in magazines. He's probably less famous than some of these other guys, but you can see these forms that have this kind of like organic, kind of humanoid look to them, like organs or things that might live under the sea. But then he contrasts that with these sharp cut edges in some of these pieces. So I've liked his stuff, even if he's a little less well known than some of the other ones. And maybe you look at some of that research that you did 9 weeks ago, and think, oh, yeah, those balloon animals, or oh, yeah, I really liked that piece that I saw that had 3 feet instead of one, and you get some inspiration there. So take a little time, do a little research, and see what you can come up with beyond some of the things that maybe we've been thinking about already.